People who knew someone who died in a freak accident. What happened? Story number 1. I knew this kid in high school who always ran from class to class, pulling his roller backpack behind him, so it's no surprise when he visited the Grand Canyon with family that he wanted to run down a slope. Well, he got going too fast and couldn't stop himself. His entire family watched him run off the side of the Grand Canyon. Story number 2. I was snowboarding in 1997 in Switzerland with a good friend. He was skiing. I had caught an edge and landed on the back of my head while also twisting my knee badly. I was being looked over by the mountain rescue and first aid. I told my friend he could keep skiing. I would head back to our villa. I ended up going to sleep at around 6 p.m. as I had a hot shower and some Tylenol 3 South after dinner. I woke up to see my friend hadn't returned and thought it was odd. But maybe he hooked up with a lady at some bar. Friend never came back from skiing. He was found deep in a crevasse the next afternoon and frozen to death. Story number 3. Not much of an accident, I suppose, but my little brother suffered from type 1 diabetes, gotta take insulin shots frequently every day. He'd had it for 15 years. But still barely made an effort to handle it because he never got comfortable with having to stab himself daily. One evening he went to bed with a low blood sugar, something he'd admitted to doing many times before, that we'd scold him for constantly and warned him would kill him, and just didn't wake up the next day. I saw him on the 5th, found out he was gone by the 8th. If it had been my mother or father it would have made sense, but to lose my baby brother so suddenly just feels so wrong. Story number 4. Knew a guy who was in a car crash and saw his aunt almost beheaded. He was about 10, screwed up his mind. At about 20 he flipped his dirt bike with his girlfriend on the back and it cracked her head open, was deep in the woods camping. She died. Couple years later, he was stealing a motorcycle, walking it across the street at night in the rain and got hit by a car, lost a leg. Couple years after that, he was angry at a music venue, so he and a friend tried to build a bomb in a parking lot. It went off and they both were killed. Story number 5. An old buddy I had known since elementary school died while driving when a chunk of loose gravel was kicked up through his windshield by a passing truck on the freeway. His best friend had been riding in the passenger side and had to steer the car to safety. It was nobody's fault, just a complete freak accident. I've always felt terrible for the friend who had to watch it happen. I think about my friend who died a lot. He was a really cool guy. I still remember playing basketball with him during recess when we were kids. It's strange to think that he never could have known how his life would end or see it coming in any way. That kid I used to play basketball thought he still had an entire life ahead of him. Story number 6. A friend of mine was walking around a small town near the capital of my country, probably looking for lunch, when a semi passed by. The container it was pulling fell on its side and crushed her. The whole thing was even in the news. The whole story of what the hell was a semi-truck doing in the middle of a small town in the middle of the day was a consequence of my home country getting rid of trains and forcing all transported goods going anywhere be transported by trucks, forcing them to cut through the most unlikely places. Story number 7. I was in high school and working retail at a chain furniture store. 2 of my coworkers were sisters. Their mother was in charge of the special ed program at my high school. Their mother had been diagnosed with brain cancer a couple of years ago. She was in remission. She came to work to pick up her 2 daughters and go to her follow-up appointment, make sure still no cancer. Not long after they left and got on the interstate, an 18-wheeler lost control after jumped the median and hit their car, killing everyone. Her husband was working and could not go to the appointment. He lost his wife and 2 daughters in a second. His whole family gone because an 18-wheeler lost control. Story number 8. Kid I was friends with in middle school was riding his bike without a helmet, hit a rock and went head over handlebars right at a T intersection. As he was getting up, an old lady driving on the cross street somehow dropped her glasses and bent over to pick them up, didn't see him. The coroner said that Nick would have survived either crash on its own, but the combination of the 2 killed him. He used to sneak into class early before school and draw a little flower pot with a cartoon daisy in it, and then he'd write the words, "Hello Flower" under it. He must have done that 100 times. The day after he died, the teacher let the whole class draw a "Hello Flower" on the chalkboard. Story number 9. Kid I was tangentially friends with in high school decided to run away from home. He was upset that he didn't have enough money to get a bus ticket to where he wanted to go and threw down his duffel bag in disgust. The handgun he had in it went off and it shot him in the stomach. His parents hosted a week-long camping and binge drinking wake for all of us. After the funeral, I developed a taste for Jägermeister during that time. Story number 10. When I was younger and drove 1 to 5 CCM bikes, I was in a bike group, consciously not calling it a gang, 'cause it wasn't like that, we just rode for fun together. Ate and did some tricks, filmed us, and that was it. One fateful day, we rode together as we always did, on a beautiful mountain road with great weather late in July. The road we were on, which we all knew and rode regularly, had beautiful curves for biking. One of our older members, let's say maybe 18 to 19, somehow lost control of his bike in one of those curves. His bike crashed into the barrier, but he slid into the little vertical metal pole that holds up the barrier. He had full gear on, boots, gloves, complete leather suit with protectors in it and his helmet. Unfortunately, the pole connected right under his helmet before his suit began. Took his head clean off, still inside the helmet. I was maybe 2 bikes behind him, almost at the end of the convoy, so I saw it unfold. It was maybe 1.5 real time, but I swear time stood still for a good minute or so. Still in shock, I called the cops. One of our members, that was closer to him, called his father. When his dad came, he had to look at his dead son in all this protective gear and pull out his helmet. With his head inside from the encampment behind the barrier, while sitting there, contemplating if I would ever ride again, I made one of the biggest mistakes in my life, and got a glimpse of his face. While it was carried out of the debris, the look of sheer terror frozen in time, I'll never forget it. As he was one of the best riders in this group, we looked everywhere for anything that might have caused the loss of control: leaves, dirt, water, oil, anything on the road. We didn't find anything. The sun was shining, his bike was always clean and finely tuned, and according to the cops, there weren't even any recent crashes on this part of the road for a potential oil spill or leftover debris or something. To this day, I never got the closure as to why it happened, what may have caused it, but his life ended right then and there. For him, the how doesn't matter anyway. Somewhat selfish even, to look for an answer, as it does nothing about what happened, but I guess humans always want to know the how why.